But as we set up the series, as we set up today's talk, Luke 12:21, Jesus is talking to a rich guy. Actually, he's talking to a rich guy, but he's telling a story. And he says about the selfish rich guy who thought only of his own earthly wealth. Remember, he got lots of grain. He was building new barns. He was going to fold his hands, go to sleep at night and go, man, I'm rich. Man, I'm lucky. Sucks to be everybody else, but I know I've got it good. And Jesus says, you know that guy? He's going to die in his sleep, and he won't leave anything behind. Wow, Jesus didn't have a lot of sympathy for cocky people who don't depend on God. And he says, his condemnation of this man in the parable, it's just a story. He says he was rich toward himself, but not rich toward God. Now, Jesus didn't condemn anybody for being rich or for wanting to be rich. Through Paul, he tells Timothy, be rich. So we got to explore that a bit deeper. So command them, 1 Timothy 6:18-19, to be rich in good deeds and be generous and willing to share. This way they will lay up treasure for themselves. Treasure in the kingdom of heaven is the point here. So that they may take hold of the life that is truly life. So in John 10:10, Jesus said, the thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy. I've come to give abundant life, full life, true life, eternal life, rich life, good life. The good life that you've always wanted, and so much more. But it comes through the avenue of this, being rich in good deeds, being generous, being willing to share. This way, you will lay up treasure for yourselves in heaven or in a heavenly kingdom. So Martin Luther puts it this way, not Martin Luther King Jr., but Martin Luther of 1520 or 1511. He said it this way, there are 3 conversions necessary for the Christian life. You say, well, I've been saved, I've been converted, preacher, I'm saved, I'm a Christian. Really? Okay, well, Martin Luther, over 500 years ago, said, really, well, maybe your heart's converted, maybe your mind has been converted, but what about your purse, or in men's case, your merce, your wallet? Isn't that interesting? For many Christians, I've experienced more conversions than heart, mind, and purse. I've had conversions of my thinking. I've had a conversion of my relationships. I've had a conversion of how I approach people who are not like me in my community. I talked to somebody recently, and they said, well, I don't know how I can be around these people that don't believe the right things, and I disagree with them, and they disagree with me. And I was like, I can't find a place in the Bible that says agree with your neighbor or just like the people who agree with you. Jesus just said, love your neighbor. He didn't say agree with them, even get them to agree with you. Nothing about that stuff. He just said love them. So there's a conversion of our relationship, a conversion of our mindset about lost people, spiritually lost people. There's all kinds of conversions. There might be the initial conversion where you say for the very first time, Jesus, I'm wrong, you're right, I'm sorry, please come into my life. Sure, most of us think of that time, a childhood prayer, an adult prayer, we might call it a sinner's prayer. But conversion's much deeper than saying a few words, reading a verse, signing a card. There's a conversion of the heart, the mind, and the purse. And in Jesus' teaching, if you're not converted at the purse or the merce or the wallet, it's highly questionable that you've had any spiritual conversion whatsoever, because he's talked more about money, possessions, and your wallet than any other single subject, including heaven and hell. Okay? So if you want to experience conversion, you say, I'm saved, Pastor. Don't tell me you're saved. Don't tell me you're a Christian. Show others and show Jesus, show me that you're a Christian by your wallet. That's virtually the words of Jesus that he would say, show me, show me, show me. Andy Stanley put it this way, and this is really a key issue here, because we're talking about joy, not guilt. We're talking about a pathway to joy, a pathway to wealth, being rich, and a pathway to joy. But it's not a pathway, guilt isn't part of the pathway, as Jesus would teach it. And Andy Stanley put it this way, God always wants more for you than from you. I want you to think about that. I want you to ask it, do I believe this? Yes or no? God always wants more for me than from me. No, he's always asking for my money. He's always asking for my time. He's always asking me, really? Because God needs your money? Doesn't need your money. Does God need your time? Doesn't need your time. Does God need your affection? Doesn't need your affection. He doesn't need you. He doesn't need me. There's nothing he can possibly gain to enhance his life by you giving him something. You giving him something doesn't actually gain him anything. There's nothing you can give that gains him anything. Okay? So if he does ask something from you, it's actually for you. If a parent said, you have to eat 3 meals a day, you've got to sit at this table and eat 3 meals a day. Like, all you want is stuff from me. You just want me to be here and sit here and eat the food. And your parent's like, okay, McFly, these meals are for you. They're for you. I don't eat these meals. You're eating your food on your plate. It's for you. No, you just want it from me. You want me to sit here. No, do you not get it? Mom, Dad, you're always telling me not to run across the road. All you care about is me doing whatever you tell me to do. Well, hey, McFly, I'm telling you to do that for you. Why are you always making me go to school? You always want to take from me, taking all my time every day, 8 hours a day, and going to school. No, I don't want school from you. I don't want these grades and report cards from me. That's for you. You see that? So when God gives us a command, it's not for him. And it's not from you, it's for you. He doesn't say, thou shalt not steal, so that you'll get out of the fun of taking other people's stuff, or being a kleptomaniac, or 5-finger discount, jockey, whatever you are. God does that so that you and I shouldn't have to lock our doors and worry about other people stealing our stuff, because he said, thou shalt not steal. Not only that, he doesn't want you to steal, because then you're going to feel guilty and lousy and learn terrible habits. And then you're going to feel guilty and have to go back to them and say, hey, I'm sorry, I stole that from you, and now you owe that plus interest. So that's for you. He tells you not to steal for you, not to get something from you. Just take away your joy. Oh, it's no fun. Right? So he wants something for you. When it comes to money, when it comes to stewardship, when it comes to handling our money possession, he doesn't need any of your stuff. So it's not from you. He wants something for you. And he wants you to experience joy. And that's the theme throughout Scripture. That when we align ourselves with God on stewardship, on money, possessions, that's the pathway to joy. It's not the pathway to, oh, I don't have anything more because I gave it away. It's his pathway to joy. Let's keep looking. Matthew 13:44. We used this the very first Sunday 2 weeks ago. So he tells an entire story. Isn't it crazy? And the story in my head lasts for pages, and I'm imagining this guy. But the kingdom of heaven is like a treasure hidden in a field. When a man found it, it wasn't his field, but he found the treasure. He hid it. And in his joy, went and sold all he had. Now, whoa, time out. He gave all his stuff away, and that gave him joy. What? Does this seem a little counterculture? You should be kind of going, there's something wrong here, there's something wrong here, there's something wrong here, there's something wrong here. And he didn't have his TV, he didn't have his internet, he didn't have his house anymore, he didn't have his car, he didn't have his tools, he didn't have his truck. But he's joyful. Why? Because none of those things were a sacrifice compared to what he was getting. In his joy, went and sold all he had and bought the field. Why? Because he gave up something of value to him, but was temporal value, to get something of lasting, eternal value that was much more valuable in the long run than the stuff he had in the short run. That's the principle of that. So as you and I store up heavenly treasures through our generosity, through our giving, through our good deeds, according to 1 Timothy 6, you'll gain an everlasting vision of what that man found in the treasure, hidden in the field. He found joy. Joy was the treasure. That's what he found. Isn't that amazing? He found the reality that, if I let go of this and grab a hold of that, I'm happier. I'm more joyful. What a beautiful picture. So secret number 1 was you can't take it with you, but you can send it on ahead. This is a quote directly from Randy Alcorn's book, The Treasure Principle. You can't take it with you. You've never seen a hearse pulling a U-Haul right? Unlike King Tut and other Egyptian pharaohs, they kept stuff with them and hoped, oh, maybe I'll use it in the afterlife. Didn't work. 3,000, 4,000 years later, we open up the tomb. Tut's still there. His gold stuff's still there. And the chariots aren't assembled. The beds aren't assembled because he didn't use them in the afterlife. You can't take it with you. He left. He left his body and he left his stuff. We do the same thing. We don't take anything with us. But you can send it on ahead. Jesus taught that by doing good things and being responsible and honoring to God with our stuff, his stuff that we have in our possession or in our stewardship, we can send on treasure ahead. And Jesus was clear. I have no problem with you wanting treasure for yourself. Just do something that gives you the most return on your investment. And investing here doesn't give you enough return. So invest over there where you get more return for yourself. He did not say, put it in heaven so that I can use it. He said, put it in heaven so that you can access it later. He's not saying it's selfish to want treasure. He encourages you, be rich in treasure. Where do you put your treasure? In heaven, in a heavenly kingdom, in the new heaven and a new earth. Secret number 2 last week, which you gleaned hopefully from Craig Rochelle in the video. Contentment and generosity come from trusting in God, not money. This should also be counterintuitive. Our society, our culture says that contentment comes from money, not from God. In other words, the more money you have, the more content you are. It also says the more money you have, the more generous your heart can be, even though statistically, the richer we are, the less percentage we give. Did you know that? Did you know the richer North Americans get, the lower their percentage of giving? Interesting, isn't it? And some of the poorest people give the highest percentage of the giving. Jesus highlighted one person, the widow who gave the mite. In other words, she had a couple of coins, she put it in the offering, and Jesus says to the disciples, check her out. She gave everything she had. And they're like, what? 100% of what she had? Like her liquidated assets or the cash on hand, let's say. She gave all of her cash on hand. What? How's she going to get supper? How's she going to get breakfast? God will take care of her. Just like Jesus said in Matthew 5 and 6. Don't worry about tomorrow. Just like the birds, they don't collect food and they live. Just like the flowers, they don't dress themselves. God does and they're beautiful. God takes care of people. God takes care of things. God takes care of animals and plants and flowers. So, contentment and generosity. Some of those generous people are the poorest. Don't have a lot. And we're going to find that Jesus affirmed the poor who were generous. And that's actually a gift to the poor to be generous. We'll learn about this a little bit. So today, moving on, Psalm 24 is really the foundation for this. The earth is the Lord's and everything in it, the world and all who live in it. The earth is the Lord's. So we sang this. I am not my own. I belong to the Lord. We're going to sing that song again. I just want to drill into that. I belong to the Lord. You belong to the Lord. All we have belongs to the Lord. Everything is the Lord's, the world and all who live in it. Why? He created it. If you create something, it's yours. You created it. God created everything. It's all his. And Deuteronomy 8:18 puts it this way. Remember the Lord your God, for it is he who gives you to the ability to produce wealth. You can say, well, sure, God made me, but I work hard. Really? You could have cancer and never work again. You could die today, never work again. You could stop breathing, have cardiac arrest. So you don't have control over that stuff. You think you do. I'm self-made. I'm a pioneer. I can do whatever. No. God allows you to breathe. He allows your heart to keep beating. A little bit like Mr. Mr. T on A-Team. I let you live. With a much kinder, gentler version of Mr. T. I let you live. I let you breathe. I let your heart beat. Okay? He gives us the ability to produce wealth. So even as we're working hard, say, I'm a hard-working man. Yeah. God allows you to have muscle and to work and to have breath. So give honor to him. So we acknowledge we're his. He owns everything, secret number 3, and I'm his steward or his manager. Now, the word steward is not a common word in our culture. I'm not sure why. I'm not sure what other words we could use, but manager might be one of them. So the best way I can think of this is imagine that you are a bank manager and that somebody else owns the bank. In the United States, they're private banks. I guess we do. You can call them private banks. main banks here, but somebody owns the bank. There's a board of directors, a president, CEO, whatever, CFO, COO, CO, whatever. There's so many C-suite things I can't keep track of them. I just learned that we have a COO right here in our congregation recently. It's true, right? COO, Chief Operating Officer. Yeah. Chief Executive Officer, Chief Financial Officer. So imagine that we are managers of somebody else's stuff. So you're a bank manager, but the money in that bank really belongs to the bank owner. God owns everything. I'm his steward, or I'm his manager. So we do have this. So imagine if you were managing somebody's farm. They own the land, they own everything on it. They own the machinery, they own the seed, they own the fertilizer, everything. But you were working. You're the hand on that farm. You don't own anything on that farm. You're paid a wage, you're paid a salary, whatever it might be. So you don't ask, what should I do with this quarter section this year? That may not be up to you. It might be, depending on what your owner wants. If the owner says, you do crop management yourself, you figure it out. Great, it's on you then. But at the end of the day, whatever money you loses, that was the owner's money, not yours. Okay? Or you might say, no, you come to me for everything. I'll tell you what to put in this quarter, that quarter, this quarter, that quarter, and how to rotate it, all that stuff. And they say, yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. You're the owner. I'm just the manager. I'm the steward. But you don't own anything. That's basically the secret. So if he is the owner and I'm his manager, if I'm a steward of his resources, then number one, following your notes, I need to adopt a steward's mentality. A steward's mentality. What is a steward's or a manager's mentality? Well, Romans 14, 10 and 12 say this. Each of us will give an account of himself or herself to God. So there's plenty of evidence throughout the parables of Jesus. Jesus talked about stewards managing resources for an owner while the owner's away. The stewards get some of it. They're managers, stewards. They manage it. The owner comes back and says, hey, what'd you do with my stuff? One guy says, well, I kind of hit it in the ground. I didn't want to lose it. He's like, what? You hit it in the ground? That's not even making interest. Next guy says, well, I had this much and I made a bit more. And he goes, wow, good for you. And the next guy says, look, I doubled your money. I invested it in high-risk investments, entrepreneurially, and it doubled. I could have lost it all, by the way. If you think through that parable, it's just a parable. But it was a high-risk approach that could have lost all of it, because that's what high-risk investments are, especially startups, right? But he said, I did a risky startup because I knew you value that kind of thing, God, or owner. I doubled it. And the guy goes, you're in charge of a lot of stuff now because you took a risky, I like it. I like that spirit. A couple of parables like that. I like that, he says. I don't like low-risk people who take my stuff and then like tuck it away. Do something valuable with it. Do something risky. Okay? Because we will give an account. In other words, I have time, talent, and treasure. You do. Oh, we all do. A limited amount. We're all going to die. We all have a limited amount of money, limited amounts of ability. I don't have a lot of talents. I've just got a few. All the rest I fake, probably like you. But we have this stuff, time, talent, and treasure. And when we meet Jesus, evidently from the parables he tells and the teachings we have in the New Testament, this is the question for a person who is already walking with Jesus and has trusted in Jesus for salvation. This will be the question. How did you steward my stuff? Not did you smoke, drink, lie, cheat, whatever, because if you're a follower of Jesus Christ, Jesus paid for that stuff. It's not heaven or hell question. The question for a believer meeting Jesus, the question for them will be, how did you steward or manage my resources on loan to you, bank manager? Did you invest your time and your talents and your treasure well? Each of us will give an account of himself to God. So that's a steward mentality. Not, yeah, paycheck, what do I want to do? New boat, yeah, why not? Quad, sure. Next thing. None of that. If all of that's for you and yours, you've got to ask yourself, Jesus is going to say, hey, thanks for taking my stuff and spending it all on disposable or on depreciating items that I don't really care about. Thanks for that, because that was mine. Are you understanding that? He may ask you that. Not that you can't have fun, that you can't eat popcorn and spend money on a movie. That's not the point of this. Take away your fun. Point is, how have you been responsible with his resources? So I'm a steward. Secondly, goes along with it, if he's the owner and I'm the manager, I need to ask the owner what he wants me to give away. Jesus, what do you want me to do? It's your money. Remember, you say, well, I can't afford to give money away to somebody who has a need. Well, it's not up to you to decide if you can afford to do that. It's not your money. You ask God, hey, God, you've given me these resources. You've given me time, talent, treasure. What do you want me to do with it? Oh, you want me to be generous with it, with others? Oh, okay. I'll let you provide more for me as I give it away. That's a biblical principle, by the way. God is generous with the generous. God takes care of the generous. It's a biblical principle throughout the Bible. So I ask him, God, how generous do you want me to be? How risky do you want me to be in my generosity? That's a fair question to ask. 2 Corinthians 8:2 says, this is so profound to me, out of the most severe trial. Now, Paul is talking about some people who were already struggling financially, were asked to provide for the needs of other people who were in greater need than they were. And this is what it says. Out of the most severe trial, their overflowing joy, trial, joy, and extreme poverty welled up in rich generosity. So he's looking back on a group of people who were in great trial, also had great joy, and also had extreme poverty. So we're not talking about any Canadians right now here. We're talking about people who are outside of the realm of social assistance. See, the reason we're all rich is because we all have access to resources. And if you don't have access to enough resources, you have a church family, or you have physical family, biological family, or you've got a community, or you've got a resource center, or you've got a food bank. You see, we have access to resources. We have options. That makes us wealthy in the world's eyes, because most of the world does not have access to these resources. So we're all rich. When the Bible says, hey, you rich people, you're probably thinking, oh, those people at that city church or with that big farm. No. It's everybody in the room in North America. So, but even if you weren't in that category, even if you were in extreme poverty relative to the financial reality that we live in, which extreme poverty, I don't know what that would place you at in terms of annual income, but you'd be down there, you'd be struggling. And he says, I want you to know that those people like that, they welled up in rich generosity and gave to someone else. Kind of like the woman who gave the widow's mite. She didn't have it to give. She gave it anyways. Wow. That's amazing. So, see, giving is not a privilege of the rich, right? It's actually, giving isn't a luxury of the rich. It's a privilege of the poor. It's not a luxury of the rich. It's a privilege of the poor, Randy Alcorn says. So no matter where you are, you and I have the opportunity to experience joy from generosity no matter how poor you are. You see, you and I would like to think we're exempt. I would like to think, well, my salary is less than his salary, so, hashtag I'm a victim, or hashtag I'm exempt because I don't make as much as so-and-so or so-and-so or so-and-so. See, none of the exemptions work when you live here, where we live. No matter how poor we are not exempt from generosity. God doesn't say, hey, you're off the hook. You don't have much, so don't worry about it. No, he says, no matter how much you got, you want joy? Enter into the privilege of sacrificially giving to others around you. It's a privilege. It's an honor. It brings joy. Wow. That's a different perspective. So in 2 Corinthians 8, verse 4, they urgently pleaded with us for the privilege of sharing in this service to the saints. So One of the things that happened in Antioch was they needed to collect money for Jerusalem. Jerusalem Christians were going through a famine. There was a famine in the area. And one of the offerings Paul collected was for the famine. And there were other opportunities where, because Paul traveled all around and he says, oh man, you guys have enough. They don't. They have less than you. Let's take up an offering and I'll deliver it over here. I'll have somebody, Barnabas or Silas or somebody will deliver it, or Timothy. Okay? Now, there were some people here who were struggling themselves, but they urgently pleaded with me, Paul and Silas, or Paul and Barnabas, I can't remember, for the privilege of sharing in the service of the saints. It would be like our elders coming to you and saying, hey guys, there's a need out there. We're going to take up an offering. The offering came and went. We sent the money on to this family that was in need. And then you came the next week and you go, oh my goodness, I missed an opportunity to get in on an offering. Are you kidding me? Please, can I just get that $50 into you? Can you please get it onto them, please? I don't want to miss out on the joy of giving. That's what we're talking about. Pleading the privilege of sharing in this service to the saints. Imagine that. Pastor, elders, please make the deadline last longer so that I can give more. Because I want the joy of giving. It's more blessed to give than receive. Amazing. In 1 Chronicles 29:14, it says, so they're building the temple. And the king says, but who am I? And who are my people that we should be able to give as generously as this? So what's happened is there's been a huge generosity. Gold, silver, emeralds, all kinds of things are going into the temple. It's just like an overwhelming offering, right? And the king says, I can't believe this. I can't believe we have this ability and this privilege of giving this generously. This is amazing. He didn't say, stop, guys, it's hurting too much. No, you don't have enough for yourself. Don't do it anymore. He just says, wow, bring it. It's not for me. It's not for the king. It's for the glory of God. And then he says, everything comes from you, and we have given you only what comes from your hand. You see, when we say on a Sunday morning, let's give back a portion to God of what he's given to us, what we mean is, God, you own everything, and I'm going to acknowledge that by physically giving back to you, or by e-transfer, physically giving back to you a portion of that as a way of saying it's all yours. So you're not giving a tip. You're not, hey, great sermon, throwing in some cash. That's not what this is about at all. It's acknowledging everything I have. And by the way, if you follow the 10% tithe, which is one way of approaching giving, then guess what? You get to live off of 90% of God's stuff. Have you thought about that? Gosh, Pastor, I just couldn't free up 10%. No. I'm not asking, nobody's asking you to free up 10% of your stuff. He's giving you 90% of his stuff to live on in a given month. 90% of what's already his belongs to him, is rightfully his. He could ask for it all back right now, and I would owe it and more. But he says, no, you live on 90, give me 10. To acknowledge it's got to be just enough to be painful so that we can acknowledge that, hey, it really is his. And I mean this. Everything comes from you, and we have given you only what comes from your hand. Wow. Amazing. Third, if he is the owner, I'm the manager, I need to know the heart of the owner. We've already been talking about this. Jeremiah 22:16. Know and understand the heart of the owner. He defended the cause of the poor and needy, so all went well. Is that not what it means to know me, declares the Lord? So you may say, well, I know what it means to know God is to know the truth and tell people this and that and preach this and he says, well, actually, what it means to know me is to know my heart, and my heart is for the cause of the poor and the needy and the vulnerable and the marginalized. That's a theme throughout the minor prophets and the major prophets, but particularly the minor prophets. How come you keep neglecting the poor and the marginalized? How come you keep singling people out who don't have what you have and not taking care of them? I hate that stuff, God says. I hate that. Don't even come to me with your church services, he says at one point. in one of the minor provinces. Just stop it. I'm tired of all your babbling and your singing and your nonsense prayers. Just go take care of the poor and the needy and show that you have my heart. That's the essence of this in Jeremiah 22. Know my heart. What matters to me? What matters to me is the poor and the needy, and you being generous with the poor and the needy, whatever that looks like in your context. 2 Corinthians 9:7 says, God loves a cheerful giver. What's God's heart? He cheerfully gives to you. He cheerfully gives to you. He doesn't grudgingly give to you. He loves to give to me and to you. So he wants you and I to be like him, be a cheerful giver. Fourthly, if he's the owner, I'm the manager, there are consequences if I neglect to be generous with his resources. Now, this is the hard stuff. Proverbs 21:13 puts it this way. Whoever shuts their ears to the cry of the poor will also cry out and not be answered. See, remember that last time you drove by somebody and said, get a job? You know what God's going to say to you next time you're in a hard spot? Get a job. I'm not going to give you a handout. Get a job. Imagine if every time you came to God with something, he just said, suck it up. See, if that's the way I treat the poor and the marginalized and the vulnerable around me, Scripture says that's what's going to happen to you. God's going to drive by you on the side of the road and go, I'll judge you like you judge other people. No handouts for you. Get a job. No mercy, because you didn't show anyone mercy. No generosity for you. You didn't show generosity. No forgiveness for you, because you didn't forgive others. Matthew 6, that's a quote from Jesus. He withholds forgiveness from those who do not forgive others. That's for real, right in the Bible. So there are consequences for neglecting to be generous with his stuff. Remember, you say, well, I don't want to be irresponsible with God's stuff. Really? It's not your choice about what's responsible or not if it's his stuff. He wants to be irresponsible with his stuff and for you to be generous with his stuff. He wants me to be generous. See, we call it being responsible. He calls it stingy. We call it frugal. He calls it, really? It's my stuff. I'll give it away as much as I want, and I'll use you as a channel to give it away. Oh, man, this stuff is really hard stuff. The money, the possessions, the generosity stuff in the Bible. Wow. I'm just hitting the tip of the iceberg here. When Jesus got mad, it was often about lack of generosity. The prophets got mad. It was often about our lack of generosity or understanding the heart of God. So here's some positives. When I'm generous with the resources of God, when I'm a good steward, I'm a good manager, when I'm generous with the resources of God, number one, I'm expressing my love for him. It's a way of saying, I love others, I love you, my horizontal and my vertical relationships are aligned. I love you, I love others. Jesus said, if you don't love your brother, you don't love me. And so it's a way of aligning. So when we give everything, when we give away things of his, we're basically saying, I love you, Lord. I love you, Lord. I love you, Lord. You want to communicate your love for God? Show your love for others by being generous. Secondly, when I'm generous with God's resources, two, I'm expressing my thanks to him. How do you know somebody's thankful? They're generous, right? So our grandkids were over the other day, one in particular, but we were over at their place last night briefly for supper. And imagine if I gave a handful of candies out to one of them, and they said, thank you. I really appreciate that. And then, well, the other three siblings are like, right? But what if they said thank you, and then the other sibling saw the candy, and that one sibling said, oh, yeah, there's lots for everybody. Let's divide them up. And I would think, wow, that's thankfulness demonstrated through generosity. There's a thankful spirit that says there's lots to go around, I'll share it. All right, so I'm expressing my thanks to him. 2 Corinthians 9:12 says, the service that you perform, in other words, caring for or giving to the under-resourced, is not only supplying the needs of the Lord's people, but it is also overflowing in many expressions of thanks to God. So you're saying thanks to God, but you're giving other people an opportunity to say thanks to God because he provided for them through you. So they get to thank God, they get to thank you, thank God for you. It's a win-win all the way around. is what he's saying. So where are you saying thanks to God? When I'm generous, number 3, with the resources of God that I manage, I experience God's blessing and provision. Isaiah 58, 6-10 says, share your food with the hungry. Provide the poor wanderer with shelter. When you see the naked, clothe them. Don't turn away. Then your light will break forth like the dawn, and your healing will quickly appear. Then your righteousness will go before you, and the glory of the Lord will be your rear guard. Then you will call. Here's the contrast. Then, when you call, the Lord will answer. Then you will cry for help, and he will say, here I am, or here am I. And if you spend yourselves in behalf of the hungry and satisfy the needs of the oppressed, then your light will rise in the darkness, and your night will become like noonday. See, that's the positive promise. The negative promise is, if you don't hear the cries of those around you, God won't hear your cries. But in this case, if you are generous and provide for the poor, your needs will also be met. God will hear your cry. Number 4, when I'm generous with the resources of God that I manage, I experience a new kind of freedom. A new kind of freedom. Matthew 6:24, Jesus puts it this way in the parable, or Sermon on the Mount. No one can serve 2 masters. Either you will hate one and love the other, or you will be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. There's probably no worse position to be in than the conflicted position of trying to serve 2 people, trying to make 2 groups happy. You ever found, I just can't make everybody happy. No, it's hard. You can't make God and money happy. That's for sure. Greed and generosity don't go together. No one can serve 2 masters, okay? So what we are introduced to is an opportunity to experience a new kind of freedom. Wow, I'm free from the hold of money. I'm free from the grip of greed. See, that's what generosity can do. It frees you from the grip. In Matthew 19:21, Jesus said to one person in particular, Jesus said, if you want to be perfect or complete or properly aligned with God, go sell your possessions and give to the poor, and then you will have treasure in heaven. Then come follow me. That was a specific invitation to one man. But the principle is similar. Free yourselves from the attachments to physical things that you have, your possessions. Free yourself from the fear that you're going to lose them. Free yourself from the sense that I have to have this to feel secure. Got to have enough land, enough assets, enough cash. Enough retirement savings. Free yourself from that. You'll experience a new kind of freedom. And 5th, when I'm generous with the resources of God, I experience a new kind of joy. Remember we started with joy? We've been singing about joy, and we end with joy again. Jesus says the kingdom of heaven is like a treasure hidden in a field. When a man found it, he hid it again, and then in his joy, he went and sold all he had and bought that field. He understood the value of what he was doing. I love Hudson Taylor. He was a missionary to China. What a guy. Amazing guy. The less I spent on myself and the more I gave to others, the fuller happiness and blessing did my soul become. Wow. Fuller of happiness and blessing did my soul become when I spent my life and my money, my time, talent, and treasure on others and less on myself. Randy Alcorn puts it this way. Giving breaks us out of the orbit around the black hole of our possessions and infuses life with joy. Isn't that interesting? When you're caught up with your stuff, whether you're rich or poor, you think you're rich or poor, you're in this orbit around the black hole of your stuff. What do I have? Am I secure? Do I have enough? Right? You need to break out of that orbit and infuse your life with joy, is what he's saying. And then, I love Andy Stanley, he puts it this way in very simple terms. Giving is the only antidote to greed. There's no 5 steps to become less greedy. No, there's just one step. Giving. Generosity. You want to get out of greed? Stop being greedy. Stop being, hey, it's all about me. It's all about myself. Just start giving. Giving your time, your talent, your treasure, and letting God refill you up. You'll always have enough. God will always take care of you. But giving is the antidote to greed. Well, what's your next step? This is my next step to becoming the best steward of Jesus' resources. What would it be? What would you need to do? Change your focus. Stop looking at your RSP fund. Stop worrying. Giving that gift you were thinking about giving. Stop worrying about whether God whether you be a responsible giver and be a lavish giver, be an extravagant giver, be a risky giver. Give stuff away and not care. And just say, God, this is your money. I'm giving it away. Do what you want with it for your glory. It's not mine, it's yours. Wow. What opportunities we have to be good stewards of what's not even ours. And then to be able to meet Jesus and he says, what'd you do with my stuff? We can say, well, I gave it away. I served with it. I invested it well. And he says, you won't believe the treasure you got on this side. Wait till you see what's coming to you. Great responsibility, great privileges, amazing treasure in heaven.